The request for music RFM LFO bundle contains 3 LFOs, 3 LFO modules that is. First module is the 1 LFO, which is a single LFO module. The second being the 2 LFO, which is a dual LFO module. And last one is the 3 LFO, which contains 3 LFOs. Let's have a look at all of those separately. So I'll take the 2 LFO and 3 LFO to the side, and the first one is the one that takes the least space of all of 3 of them, and it has this speed dial. It has a switch that you can use to set from low, medium to high by just holding and dragging. And next one is the polarity, where with this bipolar at the moment, and you can set it to negative or positive as other choices. And so the default position is bipolar with a low speed, and for the rest it has a level. The level is the output level of the LFO, but it also has a modulation input that you can use to amplitude modulate the LFO itself. Next one is an FM knob that holds the or that changes the frequency modulation of the LFO with an extra input, of course, for that. A reset input to set your start point of the LFO when you need that. And for the rest, it has 4 outputs: one for sine wave, one for triangle wave, one for square wave, and one for sawtooth or ramp, where the latter can be switched by the switch on the bottom here. So let's just have a look at what comes out of it. So I'll put this into to the input of this. It is a low speed oscillator at the moment, so you'll see the light flashing in the knob to set that, and there it goes. It's very slow rate. So you can go from very low speed, from I think I'm not even sure what the actual speed is. It's coming from 0 to 1 hertz. So then you have your LFO switch here that you can set to medium, and then it's going from 1 hertz up to 5 hertz. So let's scale it up a bit to a 5 hertz sine wave at this point, and last but not least, the high setting, which goes from 5 up to 15 hertz for the higher frequency modulation. So let's just and just to make sure that you understand what it does, this is bipolar, which goes above and below 0. It has a negative part where only half of the sine wave is used on the negative side, and has a positive setting where you use the part above 0. So that's good if you want to modulate filters with that from a specific position that you want to either open from that specific position of your cutoff frequency, or close by using the negative. So this is actually what it does. Sine waves, triangle waves, same way. Let's switch it to bipolar. Triangle wave, square wave, and the last part is the sawtooth or the ramp that you can switch at the bottom with this tiny switch here. Last thing that is easily overlooked, because it doesn't say that here, is that when you shift or left shift click on the speed dial, it changes to a sync mode, where you've got settings from 1/32 note from synced to your DAW speed up to 1/1 or a full measure. So you've got all these settings, and if you shift click that same knob again, it goes back to the latest setting of your free running LFO. So let's just put it into to some module, because I've got some modules on the bottom that you can see partly right now, because I've got a VCO of mine, a VCF, a delay, and a reverb to get some sound out of it. So let's just dial stuff up. I've got these already connected, so if everything's okay, and I'll set my cutoff, you should be able to hear something. So let's, for instance, use the triangle wave to modulate my cutoff frequency. Triangle wave or sine wave, square wave, or ramp or sawtooth, as you can hear. And with a setting at negative, as you can hear, it closes up the filter, and with a setting at positive, it opens up the filter even more. The level changes how much comes through of that modulation. And I'm afraid that for the rest, it's not possible to modulate it from itself by setting a sine wave in there, or frequency modulation might work a bit, but not completely as expected normally. So you can try that, but as you can see, at some point it doesn't do it really correctly. That's actually the advantage of let's close this up for a while. That's actually the advantage of going into the 2 LFO, for instance. So let me get this out of the way, and let's take the 2 LFO in there. The 2 LFO is a one request for music module standard width, where the 1 LFO is just a really small module to have available at any point in any space where you want it. This obviously is a bit wider, but it's the same width as the normal standard modules that I create. So in this case, I've got 2 LFOs, as you can see. So it's got the same kind of module in there, the speed, the low, mid, high setting for that speed, and the bipolar and or negative or positive values for the polarization of the wave. It has a sine wave, triangle wave, sawtooth or ramp, and a square wave output, as the other ones and it has a reset input, and it has a pH phase or PW or pulse width setting, and amplitude modulation input. So apart from those two, where both of those oscillators are identical but obviously can be set to their own speed, there is the option of modulating the one with the other that way. And on the bottom there is sort of a math operations block that you can set, where the top oscillator is, or top LFO is A, and the bottom is B. And you can see that you've got the option here with a switch to select any of those waveforms for those 2 LFOs in this setting. Yeah, those here on top just have their own outputs for all of those waves. So let's just take the wave out of this one. So in this case, I've got the low speed, the LFO. From this, it's set positive setting. So let's get it back to bipolar, and let's dial this in so we can at least see the. I'll put this up at a higher speed. Oops. So something like this, where I've got my my sine wave visible, and obviously the second one has that same option. So if I drag the same for triangle into the second one, obviously I can set the speed there as well, and then I've got these waveforms as LFO. Well, the next part, as I said, is sort of math operations where you've got an output and you've got a dial on the outside of that, which is the output volume of that output signal. So if I take that third signal here and I get stuff that is being calculated by an operation of the second onto the first. As you can see, the setting here is that this is A plus B. So do I say that correctly, by the way? Hang on one second. Yeah, the first one is A plus B, the second one is A minus B, third one is A times B, fourth one A divided by B, the next one is A mod by B, which looks at the remainder. Then the next one on the bottom is the maximum signal from A and B, or the minimum signal of A and B, the power of B, A to B, the log of A times B, and the exponential of A times B. Those are the options that are in there at the moment. So if I take this out, just let my, I'll take my first signals out. This will always create a signal from both of those signals in there. So as you can see, in this case, it's creating a combination of the A and the B signal, where the first one, and obviously you can still change those settings for negative or stuff like that, and this is the volume of that setting that you can use. So you can get some kind of interesting LFO signal there. And again, if I change any of those signals, so if I change this to a triangle wave or a square or whatever, obviously I get different results. So let's get back to the sine wave. Let's pick this into A minus B, which is almost the same as an A plus B, of course, but we can get some different results. And obviously it's always dependent on the kind of wave that you use to start off with. So in this case, a saw wave and a sine wave. The next one being the A times B, where you can get stuff like this, all dependent, of course, of speeds. And so let's put both of them pretty high so you can see what kind of interesting results you can get. The next one being A divided by B, where you can get these kind of waveforms. The A mod B, that can get really weird results. And again, all of the combinations of saw wave, sine waves, square waves, or whatever you want, pulse waves. Of course, those are very short, a ramp, and of course, the level of that modulation can be set by the outer ring here. Next one being the maximum signal of both. So that looks at the highest value of both of those signals. And again, all kinds of combinations possible there by using those either sine wave or square wave or sawtooth or pulse or whatever. Next one being the minimum of those. So you get the bottom part, the power, where it does something with a power of any value in there, the logarithmic value of it, and last but not least, the exponential. So strange waves that you can use like that, and that could open your filter in that speed or whatever. So let's have a listen to what could happen at this point. So just take that cutoff frequency of this and try drive that. Obviously this is was at a very high speed, so let's put it back at a very low speed and let's see what happens then. As you can see, you can get this kind of rhythmic effect in your output by changing the cutoff frequency that way. So, and obviously now it's closing that. So let's take one of the other effects. Let's take it into the minimum. Or the maximum for that matter. Which is pretty high, so actually I should close off my cutoff or use the value to set it lower anyway. The sine wave into the mod, which is a really weird one. And obviously it always works by modulating the one or having effect of the one oscillator on the other one. So if I change the speed of one of those, it will have a completely different way of working than before. Divided by B. A times V. Minus B, which is more fluent, of course, and the A plus and the A minus are yeah, much simpler variants of how to combine those waves. But still, you can get very interesting effects by combining the way that the waves interact by using a sine and a sawtooth. And you see that especially when you've got speeds that are not too far off, you can get very strange effects by modulating those two. Apart from all this, you can still have the option of resetting all of that and for instance amplitude modulating, stuff like that. Let's take out the third oscillator, so I'll take this to the side and use my third oscillator in there. Right, like that. Okay, so the third one is actually the same, and obviously the second LFO also had these shift left click switches for the speed dials that you can have it set to normal sync DAW speeds, like the 1/4 note and stuff like that, and that goes for both of them, of course. The 3 LFO, which has 3 of those LFOs, does not have those math operations as the 2 LFO has, but what it has differently is that you've got this LFO low setting for the speed, a mid setting, a high setting, or even audio rate. So the settings for all of those are the same. So it goes from 0 up to 1 hertz for mid. And actually, when you switch the mid, low, high button and stuff like that, you can see from the LED on the sides that it's outside of the range, because it was originally set at LFO low. So then I have the setting between 0 and 1 hertz. And if I switch to mid, you can see that it's actually on the LED on the left lights up. So that means that it's actually in low range. It's outside of the mid range. It's in the low range at the moment. And if I would go and dial this up and go back to the low setting, you see that it's going up to the top of this setting, but actually it shows that you were originally in the high setting. And again, if I would go up to high, it would do that as well. And well, the last part being the audio setting, which goes up from 30 hertz all the way to 15 kilohertz. So that way you have all kinds of variations, especially when you do frequency modulation or something, and try to do some weird stuff with other oscillators. So let's have a look by getting the oscillator. Let's get some sound in here, and of course, first of all, just take the LFO out into my frequency modulation. Oh, and I already started off with audio, so that was not really intended. So let's first set it at LFO, at low setting. The level here is going to be the amount of setting on top of whatever I have as a setting within my VCO itself. So in this case, I've got this frequency modulation, so I can put that all the way up and still have the option to dial it back in. And otherwise I could go very wide, because it's had a wide range of modulation there. Let's get this back a bit. Something like this. But especially with multiple LFOs in one oscillator, the nice part is that you can actually, I'll dial the gain of my oscillator a bit, of my filter a bit back. Especially when I have 3 LFOs in here, it might be nice to actually take one output of this and put this into the setting of my level, for instance, because I'm now amplitude modulating my first LFO with the second. And so if I turn this back, I don't have any level anymore at all, even if I put my level up here, because this is actually changing the amplitude modulation of this level for the first oscillator. So if I dial this up, I get these kind of effects. And then obviously this decides how much of that level is going to change, or the speed of that modulation. And that's the amplitude modulation, but there's also a frequency modulation. So if I dial this up, the speed of the first oscillator is going to be changed by setting the speed of the second one, because this is modulating that. So let's have a look at what it does at the moment. Let's take the triangle wave output as well. So this will decide how this responds. And obviously when I dial this up, the modulation gets deeper. if I dial this speed down, it takes longer for the one modulation to do the next, and the level is still deciding how much of this frequency modulation is coming into the next one. And yeah, that's about the modulation part. So let's take that out. I'm going back into low speed, low LFO mode for this top one. But now let's go into mid. Obviously it's going to modulate faster. Let's take it into high. It's going even faster. And in audio rate, it's going from 30 Hz up to whatever. And still, there's still the option of modulating by the other ones. So or using the level control by this. So that's loads of options, I guess, and let's get back to some more standard kind of workflow where you have, let's get the level out, and let's just take this as a control, and as you can hear, it's just going to use a sawtooth to frequency modulate the oscillator that I have connected. And let's have a look at the gate control, where I can use the gate control and put that into reset. So if everything's okay, I can now, when I press a key, obviously it's get reset. So something like that. So yeah, and obviously you can have loads of combinations. You could use 2 LFO to use one of those math operations to set the frequency modulation of number 3 and so on. So if it's interesting effects for as sort of a modulating wave for some other oscillator that you need, there are nice ways to combine those 3 LFOs, and they're true workhorses, I guess, and it's pretty easy to use the smallest one as a simple modulation tool, and if you want to get deeper, you can get one of those others, the 2 LFO or the 3 LFO. They're in the store as a complete bundle, which obviously is a bit cheaper than having to get all of those modules separately, but still there's the option to buy them separately as well. So I hope that it might be interesting for you, and I'll get back with other modules in a later stage. Thanks. Cheers. Bye-bye.